So this is the face here. We're going to just draw her body and have her holding the swan, and then later on you can colour in her face and do with her what you like. Hopefully that's okay for you all. You can use the black outline or the pale one if you prefer, but you know that I like the pale one because it lets you have a little bit more freedom for you to create. Now I'm just hoping that the lighting's okay. I've had to get a different light. It's not as good as the other one that I had. I don't think there is a little bit of a shadow there, isn't there? Let me just see if I can move that a little bit. Is that okay? Right, well, hopefully you can see that okay. I'm recording it. So you'll all get the recording later on if you want to try doing it again later on. Okay, right, so we just need a plain HB pencil, and if you've got a rubber and a ruler for when we do the background. I haven't given you a list of the pencils because not everybody has the Faber-Castell, and it's just a case of using different shades. So hopefully I've given you a list in the email of all the different colours, but predominantly with the swan, we're going to be working with whites, greys and creams. And with the girl's dress, you can have whatever colour you like, but I'm using yellows, oranges and reds. So just using lots of different shades. So we start with the lightest one and then build up to the darkest. I'll tell you what I'm using as we're going through if you want to copy me. And then the blues will be for the background. Okay, right, so there's no pressure. Just enjoy yourselves and don't feel like you have to create anything amazing, because I don't even know that I'll create anything amazing today when it's live either. Right, okay, so we'll start off at her neck. And you've got a little bit of a neck that's already there. So just with your HB pencil, just bring it down and we're going to create a little bit of a shoulder for her. So just imagine that this is going to be her arm coming down. Yeah. And if we're not happy with that, we can rub it out later. And then at this side, coming down from her neck, just make it a little bit shorter. And then that'll give the impression that her shoulder is facing away. So this side's facing forward, that one's facing away. And we're going to come down and create her arm coming down now. So this is her arm. And if we just bring it maybe to about here and give her a bit of an elbow. So just come round the corner a little bit. And then we're going to give her arm. And this is what's going to be resting on the swan. So just a straight line long, and then maybe come just down a little bit, and that's going to be our hand. Now we can rub these out. These are just sort of our initial sort of marks. Right, so we've got this bit in. So from her elbow, it's going to be the bottom of the swan. So just at the elbow, just bring in make a little mark. And then just bring it that this is going to be the bottom of the swan coming down to the bottom of the page. So just aim it all the way down to the corner, like so. Sorry, can you see everything okay? Yeah? Right, so now we're going to imagine where the swan's head is. As well, we're going to imagine where the bottom is. So if we just put in some marks, so right down here at the bottom of the corner, just imagine that this is going to be the front of the swan. So just put in a little mark there just now. We can change it if we have to, but it gives us something that we're working towards. And then up here where we've just finished off her shoulder, this is where the swan's neck is going to start coming over. So if we just do a little arch like so for now. Yeah, and then if we start to bring it all the way around, this is going to be his head. So coming round to about here. And then going to create a little bit of a beak coming down. Again, we can rub out. We're just getting some rough ideas in to see where everything's going to be. Oops, sorry. Right, so we're going to come back up to the top here and we're going to imagine that she's got her hand coming around the swan's neck. So if we just put a little line there for now. And then underneath is going to be where the rest of us. So just a little curl coming around like so. And then we've got this invisible line that's now coming down through her hand. This is the rest of the swan's neck. Now we've got her hand resting down here and we want the neck just to come down. Well, first of all, what we'll do is we'll get the swan's eye in and then you'll know where you are. So we've got the swan's head coming down here and this is going to be the beak. So if we bring up the rest of the beak, so just a little curl at the bottom and then mirror this line that you've already done coming up to create a bit of a beak. And then this line can come all the way up to about here. Yeah. And then round about here is where we're going to put in a circle for the eye. And now you're starting to see that you're going to have to just draw a line all the way around to create a little bit of it that's going to come down and meet this bottom bit here. So we're going to come up and start to come around the corner. Wait, I'm a little bit squee with as well, but I'm going to rub out if I have to. Right, so we're going to bring in we're going to imagine as well. If we bring the line up to here, we can imagine now that this is her shoulder coming down through the swan's neck. So just do an invisible line and then bring our arm down here. Just a line just now, we can change it if we have to. And this line is going to join on to this hand. So bring her hand down into this line. And then the other side coming around, and then this is going to be her arm coming down. So hopefully you can see now where the neck is going to be. So it's going to be an invisible line coming down here through her hand, where the rest of the swan's neck is going to be. Now, once you've got these lines in, if you think, oh, I want my swan to have a fatter neck or a thinner neck, that's fine. You can start to rub out. You've got that sort of outlines that are there now to kind of guide you. Whoops, sorry. My hand keeps getting in the way of this thing that's holding my camera. So now the idea is to get from here down to this point where we drew down here. So just join that up. And then this is where her hand is. So if we just draw the rest of her hand now coming up round again, once we've got these lines in, if we want to make her arm fatter or thinner, we can just get those initial lines in so that we kind of know what we're doing. And then coming around the corner and then mirroring this side of her arm. Hopefully it's starting to feel like you're drawing a swan. I don't like it when I see confused looks on people's faces, so I hope you're all right. Is everybody doing okay so far? Right, so we've got this little bit of the neck that just now needs to come down, maybe to about here. And then if you think that you've got this part of the swan's body here at her elbow, you're now wanting an invisible line to go through her arm to here. And you can make that little bit as fat or as flat as you like, and then bring it round to join up with the neck. And then once you've got the neck in there, if you just extend the line around and make a little bit of a curl there just to show that that's the neck. And then at the bottom, we're going to join up, just leaving a little bit of a space because I was going to have her dress in under there. So just joining up the bottom. And then at the where the bottom of the swan is, if you just do a little bit that looks like her knee, just a little curl, like so, then it looks like the swan is going to be sitting on her knee. And then with her arm, you can just bring that down so that you can't see all of it. The swan's neck is then just hiding it. And so you should have if you have a little bit here just for shoulder. And then if we do her dress, so if you do have a little bit for a shoulder, you can do a little strap. But if you can't see your shoulder, it doesn't matter. Just a little strap that's going over her arm. And then if you imagine that this is her top, so we just do a little squiggly line over to where her arm ends, and then do a strap that comes down along her arm. And then if you just hook it around, just bring it all the way out and around so that it looks like it's going around the back of her arm. Do you want me to do it again? Or has everybody managed to do that? Has everybody managed? Right. So with the swan's beak, mine is very long. So I'm going to rub it out a little bit and make it a little bit shorter. So you can make that judgment call on your own swan. And if you want to make the head a little bit fatter as well, now that you've got your eye in, do that. I've gone over and made a bit of a fatter head, and I'm just going to make the beak a little bit smaller, a little bit thinner maybe. So try that. And then of course, this is when you can, once you've got those lines in, you know, if they're a bit squee-whiff or you're not happy, just go over it and rub out and change. Right, for the swan's face as well. So if you want to just initially get some marks in so that we can do the black. So from the eye, so go around your circle, and then in the middle of the circle, just do a straight line coming out. And then we come from the eye down with another line that's going to come down to about the beak, round about here. So it's curling, kind of curling up. And then coming around and down. So you're doing like a little hook, like so. Yeah. And then if you go back up to the eye and then come down the other side with a straight sort of line, like a triangle, and coming down towards the beak, just maybe give it a little hook just as you're coming down in. And then if you want to emphasize the beak, just if you're happy with the shape that you are, then from this little hook that we've done, we're going to come down and mirror this sort of area. So a little line about here. And then we're going to come down with a straight line all the way to the bottom. And that's going to be the shape of your sort of beak. And then here, if you just do a little line coming in, and you could maybe just do a little circle there and there, and we'll colour all of that black eventually. But that kind of gives you, all of this area here is going to be black, and this bit here is going to be orange. Yeah? Have you managed to do that okay? So this is my time now where I would just go in now and whatever lines I'm happy with, emphasize, and the lines that I'm not happy with, rub out. So I'm just going to rub away that little line. So, and then if you, I'm feeling as well that I just want the body to come out a little bit fatter, so the beak's going to touch. So now I'm just going to come around and just join that on here, and then rub out that first line. And then that just gives them a nice fat breast. wonder if that light would help. Is that better with the light there? Right, so hopefully you've all managed to get your girl holding the swan. And now if we want to do a little bit of, we're going to give it a little bit of like detail so that it looks like a swan. Okay, so I'm going to give it a few feathers. So here, like a leaf sort of shape. So coming down and around, do one about there. And then maybe do another one, same sort of shape about there. And then just one maybe there. And then bring these sort of down so they're coming down towards the tail. Maybe another one there. And then I just did some squiggles like so all the way to the end. Just little squiggles. And then further up, I just did some little circles. So some little circles around about here. 2 deep, say. And did it in all, usually odd numbers are best. 3s, 5s, 7s. And then up here, I wanted to do a few squiggles. So just a few squiggles, like maybe that one, maybe another one underneath, just little squiggle. And maybe another one there. You can do as many of them as you like. And then a little squiggle to make it look like her hand's holding on and it's ruffling the feathers a little bit, a little squiggle coming down there. And then some small little triangle, half triangles here. So just sort of filling up the breast a little bit with these. And then I did another little cluster down here, like little V's. Like so. Has everybody managed to do that okay? Yeah. Okay, so we've now got her body and her holding the swan, and we'll go ahead now and start getting our coloured pencils onto it. So I think we will start with her dress. We'll get some colour on there. So I'm going to start using a cream, and then I'm going to build up to a cadmium orange, and then build up again to a dark cadmium orange. And then I'm going to use a light cadmium red. Now, if you don't have them colours, I would just suggest finding similar ones. So the lightest being a creamy colour or a yellow. And then oranges, of course, if you wanted to give her a different colour dress, just find three or four tones that would just build up. And to brighten up at the very end, I'm going to use a cadmium yellow. Yeah. So starting with the cream. In our light circular motions, we won't really see anything on this layer because it's so light, but nice light circular motions to colour most of her dress, but I leave a tiny little bit right in the centre that will just keep white. And that'll give it looks like there's a shine coming in on her dress or her top, whatever you want to call it. And try and keep it nice and light so that you can build up your layers on top. So there, I've left a little square in the centre that's white. And then we're moving up to the next shade, the next tone, which would be the cadmium orange. So lightest first, then getting darker and darker. And I always start in the corners and around the outside in my light circular motions. And if you start right in there and then slowly just work your way in, you can create that sort of feeling of making her body look round. But then have it darker at the corner, right at the line, and then getting lighter as it comes in. It brings you to this white point that we've already started and makes it look like there's a little shine. So just the little circular motions going all the way around the outside. I just need to take a little drink, sorry. Hopefully this will just be something nice and relaxing for you, Linda. I feel bad for you. Sometimes it's quite nice just to sit and watch, isn't it? And then you can do it later. So that's us got our second sort of layer in. I'm just kind of bringing it in. So you can still see a little bit of the yellow, the first creamy colour that we've done. And then the orange is sitting on the top of it, and then it gets white in the centre. And then moving up to the dark cadmium orange after that. And if you've got a nice sharp pencil, so with this layer, I'm going to do little lines coming down. So like what we do with the lips. So starting at the top and then just doing a little line coming down and then just doing that the whole way along the top of her dress. And if you, so like with her lips, so to make her top look like it's going that way, going in that direction, and then coming over this direction for this side. And then it just adds a little bit of volume. It just makes the dress look like it's coming out from her body and that it's got a little bit of flowing movement in there. And so just bringing those lines further down. And making it at its darkest where it's going to be having contact with the swan. So we'll just keep that in mind. These are always going to be darkest in here and up around where the neck of the swan is as well. So whatever colour our dress is, just be mindful to try and make those a little bit darker in there, and then it looks like there's a shadow being caused by the neck of the swan. And then a little bit darker in here as well. So that's us got that layer. Now at this point, if I wanted to feel like I had a little bit more yellow in there or having some of the light colours, I'd go back to my lightest colour again. So I'm going back to my cream and I'm just going to fill in a little bit more with the cream so that there's not just as much white in there, just a little bit of white. And if you go over where you've been on the orange as well, it just keeps it all more cohesive and blends all the colours together. And then at the end, when you burnish it, it'll just make it really vibrant. And you get all those colours that'll start shining through. And so now I'm going up to my darkest colour, which was for me the light cadmium red. And doing a little bit more of the same, so little circular motions again to blend in all those colours that we've already got. Can you see it starting to become more vibrant as you're doing that? hopefully you can start to see. And then back over to this other side. And what I do with my colouring is I do little squirrely sort of swirls, squirrely swirls, I don't know what you call them, but starting at the outside line and then just gradually little swirls coming in towards the centre. And it just, for me, it's just a look that I like. It just makes it feel like there's a little bit of character and a little bit of something else going on in the material of the dress. And so just the circular motion, so those lines that you've already created, when you go over the top of it with the circular motion, it just softens the lines, but still makes it look like it's a little bit flowy. And so you can keep doing that, lots and lots of different layers until you get it to the shade that you want. Bring some of that lighter orange down in. And we'll start to put in our shades and our shadows and things in a little while. And so with your darkest colour, or if you want to go even darker, I might even go up to a red, so a deep red. You can then use that maybe for your line, so your little strap. So if you want to just go over that pencil line that you did, so the little strap that's coming over her shoulder there, and then emphasising this red at the top, and then coming over and doing her little strap coming around her dress, and then add some of these little lines again over the top. So if you go right in at the very top and then flick it out, it looks like it's coming out from her body. And try not to have any like space between the line at the top and your line coming down, and then that helps with that sort of illusion. Now, if you wanted to draw little pockets or buttons or anything like that, you could do that as well. So every time I do the little lines coming down, I soften it with little circular motions going over the top. And then just keeping it at its darkest in the corners as well. Right, so that, we'll come back to there. We've still got a bit more to do. In fact, I'm going to go over it a bit with a bit of the cadmium yellow. So wherever you've been, go over the top of it with the cadmium yellow, and that'll start to really brighten it up. And if you want to, if you're happy with those colours, you can burnish it by pressing down hard and it'll make it really vibrant. If you're not happy with those colours, just continue to layer it up, and then you can go over the top of it with a white or a cream if you don't want that vibrant yellow over the top being your top sort of colour. If you want the red or the orange to be predominant, go over it with a white to burnish it and really push all those colours that you've just put in together. Right, we'll do a bit of the swan now. I'll fill in more of her top in a little while. Before I do that, I'm going to give her a little heart. She's needing some love today, so I'm just going to draw a little heart in the centre there and press down hard to burnish it straight away. Just make it really, really vibrant and dark. Right, we'll do a little bit of our swan now. So it might help you if you have your eye done first. Some people, you know how I always like to do the eyes first. But with the swan, it's not like the other eyes. I haven't got any emotion or anything going on in there. It's literally just black and a little tiny bit of white. So just that circle that you've created, if you can just find a little bit where you can have a little bit of white, and then press down as hard as you can to get that as black as you possibly can. And if you prefer to use a fine liner to do that, then, you know, do that. But just be aware with the black, you need to really, really press it hard to get that vibrancy. And so with the eye, you can either colour this little line here black and just leave it like that, or you can get fancy. And I'll just show you a quick, you could do that and have little swirl coming around like that, or you could have whatever shape you wanted. So have a little play and see if you would just, if you like that swirl, or if you just want to keep it plain and have it, you can have it just a straight line, or you can make it that it's more of a triangle coming in to the eye, so that the eye sort of merges into that triangle. And then we're going to, with our black, start to colour this little area that we created with our pencil. I'm starting off really light, doing the circular motions, and then eventually we'll press in hard and get that really, really, really black. But I want to try and keep a little bit of white in this bit of the bottom bit of the beak. So if I just come down and outline the black, and again, the centre of the beak, that there, you want that to be really, really black as well. So try and have a really sharp pencil for that little bit. And then start to add a few more layers to get that to darken up a little bit. And then just maybe put a few sort of lines into the beak. So most of it's going to be white, but you've just got a little black sort of line going in there as well, because we're going to have this orange, but I like it when there's a little bit of black in there as well. And then this little bit here, make it really black as well. So it's kind of like a little, it's a bit like a half a heart, I would say. So if you imagine a love heart coming out the other way, outside the beak, that's what that kind of shape there is, if that helps you. And then just keep layering up this black. You want that to be as black as you can possibly get it, going into the eye. So it takes you to do a few layers and then to start pressing really, really hard to burnish it. And then that'll make it look shiny as well. Right, so if we get our oranges, am I going at the right pace for you all? Yeah, I'm not too fast. Just rein me in if I get too fast. Right, so we'll start like what we did with our dress, starting off with my lightest orange. So for me, that's the cadmium orange. And so I'm going to start colouring in the beak. So I'm going to leave a little area that's white. So having orange all the way around the outsides, at its darkest in at the black line where the separates the beak, and then coming up this outside line as well, and then a little area of white in the centre. And then bringing this orange down into this bottom part of the beak as well. And then building it up to the next orange. So for me, that's dark cadmium orange. And then keeping it at its darkest, so pretty much just doing a line right next to where the black is. And right in where the the beak is. And at the end. So it kind of looks like really dark, a little bit lighter, and then white. And then that kind of helps to give you, which looks a little bit like there's a shine coming in on the beak. And then a little bit darker underneath as well, where the beak is in the center of that black line. And I'm going to go back to my black and then just emphasize the bottom of the beak, and then just maybe have a little bit more black coming in. So it kind of looks like there's a bit of orange, there's a little bit of black, and there's a little bit of white at the bottom, just again to make it look like there's a shine. And if you wanted to use a fine liner to darken up that line, I don't know where my fine liner has gone. This always happens to me. Yes, I don't move, but I still lose something. Never mind. If you have a fine liner, I would just go in and emphasize that central point of the beak just to make it really dark. And then if you wanted to go even darker, bring in a little bit of red even, just in some areas on the beak. Just find an area where you want it to be a bit darker than the rest. I'm doing it just at the very top here, right in where the black is. And I mean, if you want to go back in and you're not happy, go back to your lighter orange and just fill in a little bit more, and then still have a little white bit, perhaps. And when you're happy, just burnish it, press down hard, and then you get that vibrancy on your beak. Right, so I used creams and greys and pinks in my swan. I know that's not what colours you would normally see in a swan, but I just do it that way. So I'm going to start off with a cream, and then round about the face, just keeping it nice and light, just start to colour around the eye with a little bit of the cream and a little bit up at the top of the head. So all I did was find little areas where I did a little bit of cream. Mostly I want it to be white, but so have a little bit of cream and a little bit of pink. So I did a little bit of cream coming down the neck as well. Just on the inside, I had this bit here all white, and then cream here. And then a little bit of cream down here at the bottom of its breast. So just little circular motions, just finding little areas to have a little bit of cream. And then again, I did a little bit more down at the bottom over here, coming down towards the end of the tail. So just a little bit of cream there. And then I'll come back in with a little bit of cream in a minute. But first of all, if you have some greys, so I've got 3 different greys. I've got a cold grey 2, a cold grey 3, and a grey, what's a Vienna one? I forget, 6. That's what one I've got. And the very darkest one, I've got a Payne's grey, and I'm aware that not everybody has all those colours. So if you just find 3, and if you have 4, then that's fine. Different shades of grey. So a really light one, a medium one, and then a really dark one. And then starting with the really, really light one. So these little feathers, these little individual feathers that we made, we want them to look like they are coming up and out over. So we want like a shadow. So if we go in underneath the pencil line that you've made with your lightest colour, just little circular motions. And if you do it just to the tip there, you don't want to go right round that side, because then that takes away the illusion. You kind of want your shadow to start just at the tip and all the way down under, just to about where you started the line. Hopefully you can see that. I'm going to press down a little bit so that you can see it. So it almost mirrors the shape that you've already done. but it's a little bit thinner at the top here and it gets fatter down here. So if you were to do a line, it would almost mimic what you've already done. And that's your shadow that's starting to come out from underneath that little feather. And if we do that with all of them, all of these little ones, so I'll do 3 for now. I'll do these 3. And then if you go back in with a darker grey, so I'm going to use the cold grey 3, and then make it that it's darker closer to the line. So you're not wanting to cover over all of what you've already done. You want it to be that your shadow gradually gets lighter and lighter. So if you now go over with a darker one closer into the feather and let the other grey that you've just done sit underneath it, it'll give the illusion of the shadow just getting fainter and fainter. Yeah. And then if you go in with an even darker grey, so Payne's grey or whatever one, or a warm grey 6, if you go in and then just directly underneath that line, just emphasize it, just to the corner there. So all this area, you don't have any shadow, just this side. And then if you want to go back in either with your lightest grey or your second one that you used, and just try and blend some of those colours out into each other, then you're creating a bit of a shadow. So I'm using the lightest one that I started off with. Is that picking up okay? Can you see that? Yeah. So if we do that with all of these little feathers, so starting with the lightest one, sort of mimicking the shape. And then the darker one. And then going up to the darkest one. And then you can emphasize those lines even more. Once you're happy with the shadow and you've got it really dark at the beginning and then lighter and lighter as it fades out, you can go in with your black, and you can again use a fine liner if you prefer. I just need to sharpen my black, and it's a noisy, I've got a noisy one now. Got an electric one. I really like it. I've fallen in love with my electric one now. So right at the very end, so right here at this little bit here, right at the very end, if you make it at its darkest with a black, press in, then you'll get that sort of illusion. And if you do that with them all, and then once you're happy with that shadow, if you want to go over it with your cream, then you can kind of like sort of emphasize it a little bit more by it getting a little bit lighter. Hopefully you can see that okay. I know it's quite hard when you're working with light colours. Right, so we've just got a few more of these to do. And then moving up to the darker again. And just trying to have it really dark directly underneath that pencil line. Now you don't need to use greys for these. You could use brown tones or blues and purples, whatever you like. It's just about trying to get the idea of a shadow. But I think you're quite good starting off with your greys and then building it up to try different shades to see how you can get them to look. And then just emphasising that line with the darkest one. And then because she's got orange and things in her dress and in the beak, I brought a little bit of orange into my swan as well. So with the lightest orange, cadmium orange, I just did a few little lines. So on this little, just a couple of little flicks of line coming in on the. You don't have to do that. You might find that you prefer to not. But I tend to just let the pencil, once I start and I think, well, like I've got orange in a dress, I'll put a wee bit of orange in my swan as well. You know. And the same at the top of his face. So just where the black ends, a little bit of orange just here. And do little flicky lines coming in. And the same at the top of the head. Just to brighten him up, and around his eye. Around that black, just a little line of orange, just to bring him alive a little bit. Right, so with a grey, so you can use your lightest grey. I'm going to use my second grey, the cold grey 3, and then start to create a few. So I just need to turn my swan around a little bit so he's facing me. So from his neck here, just a few little lines coming out. So this here's going to be shadowed in a little while. We'll start to get that, some shade in there. But just a few little lines to make it kind of look like there's a few sort of feathers there. And then just going in circular motions right in at the line, just darkening up this area. And same, going up towards her dress and having some of the grey going over the top onto her dress, just to create that shadow, and a little bit coming down onto the swan's back, just slightly. If you have elements of grey, then it makes the swan look more white in the white bits, if that makes sense. And just bring it up into the dress and into that area where her elbow is as well. And then same underneath her arm. So getting in the same way that we did the shadow underneath there, we want to do the same effect underneath her arm. So that it looks like her arm's sitting on his back. And then emphasize that line, just go in with a sharp pencil just to darken up that line. And under her hand. And then just light circular motions to create the shadow. Just dragging out some of that dark area. Right, so I'm going to use some white because predominantly I want my swan to be white. So I'm going to go around with circular motions around the most of it, except for the bits where we've got it all grey. and the bits where we've got some detail. First of all, I'm going to just put a little bit more grey coming down the back. So like what we did here, a few little swoopy sort of lines, yeah, just the same coming down every now and again, just down his back, just here, near the top. But, you know, feel free if you think, oh, I want to do more, or I don't want lines, you know, go with what your gut feeling is of how you want your art to look. This is just how I create, and you don't have to, you can think, right, I don't like that. Again, a wee bit dark in here at the top of her arm as well, just in on the swan's back, just there. And then with the white, I'm just going to go around with the circular motions just to make most of it white, to keep it vibrant, and you won't really see anything, but it just makes your artwork look more finished when you've coloured all of it rather than just leaving it white. And as well, if you put like a base of like a white, or that's why I always start with the lightest colours first, because you can still go over the top and it tends to blend things in softer. Whereas if you were to go straight down with a red, say, then it would be harsh and you wouldn't be able to blend it as well if you had a lighter colour sitting underneath it. They just tend to blend into each other when you do that. And if you do it lightly without burnishing it. Right, so I'm not going to colour any more white because that's something that you can do on your own. I want to put a little bit more grey in up at the top of his head as well. So I'm going to use a little bit of nugget. If you've got some nugget brown, any kind of browny sort of tone, or a bister, or a burnt sienna, or whatever you like, just to emphasize the top of his head. So I'm just going to go over that sort of line just there at the top. I'm not going to take it all the way along. And a little bit just underneath his chin here as well, just coming in maybe to where his eye is. And then going back to the greys. Oh, that's orange. Just on the top of his head, starting to create a little bit of a shadow. So just the little circular motion. And so if he looks a little bit dirtier and grayer at the top, it just helps to make the rest of him, where he is white, look really white. And if you wanted to put little lines in, more lines or more little things that look like feathers or hair, little soft sort of squiggles, then they're quite nice. So just a little sort of squiggle coming down. So it goes from being a solid sort of grey colour up here, and it gets softer and softer, and then it becomes little squiggly lines, and it just kind of looks like soft sort of feathers. And so I'm going to do a little bit of grey, just coming around to emphasise the line and coming in towards those little circles. Going to have all of that white, but just a little bit of grey coming along here. And then aware as well that we want a shadow going on underneath her arm. So underneath her hand, sorry. So just fill in that area there, making it grey. And then we'll do the same there as what we did here. So your lightest grey, then to your darkest grey, and emphasising it with a black just underneath. You don't really need to do it at the top. That's my darker one. So an area that's a lot darker, then it gets lighter and lighter and fades out. And then your black or your Payne's grey or just underneath her hand, just to where it comes round the corner. And if you're soft enough, and you can drag that out a little bit as well, without it being too harsh. And then finish it with the black, just to make it even darker, just find an area just near the end of her hand, perhaps. How's everybody doing? Yeah, thumbs up. Everybody quite happy? Yeah. So in this little hook area in here where it's emphasised, I'm doing a wee bit of black in there as well, just to make it stand out a bit. So what we've done here under these feathers, we need to do the same under these little tiny ones as well. So just at the tip, because it's a different sort of shape, you kind of just want your shadow underneath it, because we've got it coming down the way, so you want your shadow coming down as well. You don't want it kind of going to the side like these ones, just underneath at the tip, really. So it's a bit like just doing a little circle underneath. And build all them up. And if you wanted to do them a little colour, if you wanted to put orange or pinks or anything into them, then it's quite nice. I just quite like making things look a bit quirky rather than real. And using colours depending on how you're feeling, or no, I keep doing that. Right, so I think if we bring in a little bit of background as well, we can continue with our swan, because it'll only start to stand out once you've got a little bit of background in there as well. Yeah. So I'm using blues. So I've got light cobalt turquoise, a light phthalo blue and phthalo blue. At the minute, I might even bring in a darker blue as well. Which one would I bring in? If you have like an endanthrin blue or something, just a really dark one at the end. And then also for round the side, sorry, not that one, I'm using a burnt ochre. And to brighten it up, you can go over the top of that with a cadmium yellow or something like that, or a Naples, a dark Naples or something. So I'm going to just do around this sort of bottom area, and then you can sort of emphasize, you can fill that in at the top once you've got your own time. Yeah. So with the very light, when the cobalt turquoise, just light circular motions starting to go out around the outside of the swan. So just all the way around. So it's really, really light at the minute. And so the way I do it is I tend to have, like when I'm doing the actual characters as well. So I usually go from the outside in. So it's the same for the outside. So having it at its darkest and most predominant sort of colour going around the direct outside of the characters and around the outside edge of the picture. So going right up the side and then having little squiggles coming in. So if you start off with it really light, then you barely see this, and then the darker ones are which are predominant, but these help sort of like add a little bit of dimension into it. So I'll just do it to maybe there with our first light colour. So it's mostly white in the centre because I wanted it to look more like a sort of snowy, sort of cold sort of scene. And then all the way around the outside. And I wanted to have little lines every now and again. So that's why I said to bring in a ruler. So if you do have a ruler, just every now and again have a line. So I use this Pergamano ruler because I can see that it's really straight, because I can line up these lines on the side of the page, but whatever ruler you want. But if you fill all of your sort of page, if you can go right to the top and have it straight, and then every now and again, you can either I use some pink as well and some yellow for lines, but just do a random sort of line. It doesn't have to go all the way to the top, and you can hardly see it, but you can go over the top of it in a little while, and then line that up again, and then have maybe another, have another line maybe just coming down there, and then have another one perhaps further in, so if I line it up with the other one, or maybe have another one here. So that one that I did was a lot lighter, so I'm just going to go over the top of it again just to darken it up a little bit. Now sometimes I hang hearts from these lines, sometimes I just leave them. I might put some more in, but you can use these can end up being like lines of like wallpaper, or they can just be like streaks that you just like having different sort of backgrounds that it isn't actually anything in particular, it's just giving a little bit of interest in your backgrounds. I'm going to go back and just start going over again, another bit of a layer with this pale blue. And if you start then doing little lines that come up to mirror that, just keeping it nice and soft, so it's not like an obvious line. And then again, have another little bit of white, and then have another little squirrely line coming up. And if you have them that they're at different lengths, so they're not all like lined up with each other, and then if you're happy with that line, maybe just do a little bit of a darker bit on it, and then it fades up into another line, if that makes sense. I hope I'm making sense. And now you've got those sort of lines as mirrors, you can then, so I'm going to use this line here now to create a block of colour that comes up just by doing my circular motions, and then you start to see that you've got some white coming in there. Was I in the camera? I think I was showing you that with it being off camera, was I? No? Oh, it wasn't. Just looked like it was. So now I'm going to just, the lines and the marks that I make now, I'm going to just use random and use these sort of lines as my sort of like marker, and have some of them, in some areas it's a full colour, another, so there's a bit of a white line starting to come up here that's going to mirror that. I don't think I'm explaining myself very well. It's so that I don't want it to just look like lines, if you know what I mean. I want it to look like it's just, I don't know how to describe it. This is when I'll come back to you with it once my head can explain it better. Right, so I'm coming up round her arm a little bit just to get some of that in. Right, now I'm going to go back and get a darker colour now. Now, if you want to have some of the colours from her dress, so there's a bit of yellow in there, it might be quite nice to have a little bit of yellow as well, like a creamy colour, and some orange, because we've got orange in our dress. So I'm going to use my cream, pardon me, and then in the areas that's got a little bit of white, just add a little bit of cream. No, I'm not going to colour all of it, just every now and again find a line and then just maybe go up the side of it with a little bit of the cream. And maybe in here. And because there's a bit of orange in her dress, I'm going to bring in my cadmium orange. And then I'm just going to maybe do a few lines next to that orange line in different sort of lengths. And maybe put one here. And again, I'm just doing it down the bottom, but if you want to have them up at the top as well, once you get happy and you like what you've done at the bottom, you might want to do at the top. You might want to keep the top just plain. I did put a little moon here, so I used like something round and made a little moon there. But we're going to now get a darker blue and the light phthalo blue, and get darker just directly around the swan's body. So dark on the line, and then every now and again just a little squiggle coming up and out. Now if you keep it nice and light, with your motions nice and light, then you'll be able to keep adding loads of layers on, and you'll be able to see, because you've got that baseline, you can see how you can start to draw little things in there. So you could just do a little squirrel, you could do little circles, you could do little hearts, whatever you fancy. But if you just keep them nice and light, then people don't really see them, but they do. And it makes people think, oh, what else is in there, kind of thing. So just little squiggles or whatever, but just keeping it at its darkest right round the body. And then that starts to emphasize the swan, it starts to emphasize the girl. And as you know, with me, I like to sometimes do this with surrounding people with a colour. So if I'm expressing myself, or if I feel like I need some calm in my life, say, or I just want to feel relaxed, I would surround myself with blue. And so I kind of see it as a bit of a nice sort of thing to give yourself, if that's what you need. So yeah, and then if you start to find that your lines, you're losing them a little bit because you're getting darker, just emphasize them. And you might think, I just want it darker at the bottom, or I want it to be dark all the way up, but just sometimes just nice to have it darker there, and then it gets lighter and tails off. And so I'm going to do a little bit darker. So starting at the edge, and as you know, I edge the paper so that you don't see the white. So go right down the side of the page with your pencil, and then every now and again, just come in and make it a little bit darker and thicker. Now this is a very time consuming thing, you know, when you're doing it on A5, but that's why I tend to just do it around the edges and around her. And then if you leave a little bit more white in the center, it gives you place to put words. It just gives a bit of space, and it just doesn't make your artwork look so busy. So if you do like adding words or saying things, that's a nice, you've kind of like made an area where you can frame your words, I find. That's what I do. Right, so I'm gonna now with the burnt ochre. I really like these ones that are kind of like goldy, sort of like browns, because they start to make it look like a vintage kind of feel. And I kind of like doing that. So again, I'm going to go right round the side of my page. So if you go on the side and edge it, if I do that, I don't know if you can see, you can't really in this light, but if you just edge it and burnish it as well really hard, and then every now and again just come in and then have a straight line again going right down the edge, and then if you come in another little bit and maybe a little bit further the next time. And if you do that all the way around your artwork, it kind of finishes it off and makes it look like a complete piece of art, and it just adds a little bit more interest. Once you've done that, if you quite like them, you can come in and do little squiggles, pretend it's like scroll words, or you could have it that you've got things that are hanging from it, so like having a little line, and then that's where you could hang a heart, or you could make a little branch and have a little bird sitting on it. If you can you kind of see where I'm coming from? Yeah. Not everybody can see where I'm coming from. And that's when I start to get lost in my art. That's when I'm starting to get relaxed, when I'm just letting my pencil do what it wants to do. I'm not getting any expectations on it, and I think, right, well, I'll let that come all the way down. And then you start to think, I quite fancy hanging something there, or that's something that I could put a word on, or so I would do that all the way around the outside of the artwork. I'm just going to get a darker blue to start building up some more of the outside. So now I'm on phthalo blue, and so getting it that it's really, really dark now, and you can take it that it's going right around all of her and giving her that blue sort of calm. Or you could just find areas where you want it to be darker and then just go in and emphasize. Yeah. And then if you've got some lines that you really like, or some swirls, because if you do your little swirls and your little images like little hearts and things in the early days with your light pencils, when you start to do your layers, you start to lose them. So if you didn't like them, they start to disappear anyway. But if you did like them, it's a nice opportunity for you to then think, I don't want to lose that, so I'm going to go in and I'm going to emphasize it, or I'm going to add to it. Right, so I'm going to go back and do a little bit of my, I've just got a mark on her face. Do you want me to do a little bit of her face with you, or a little bit of her hair, or did you want me to do her body, or continue with the backgrounds? With the swan, it's a bit more just adding more white and just adding your greys to get your sort of shades in. Or if you want to get, you could start adding colours into the feathers, make them pinks and oranges and things. What would you get most out of me continuing to do? We've got like another 35, 40 minutes. I can do her face and her hair. Can do like, because I gave her a little garland with gems that goes round her head. If you want me to do a little bit of her hair and do some of the gems, do you want to do that? Okay, so we'll do one half of her hair, and then when you're doing it afterwards and you have got the dark colours of hair, just put a little bit of paper over it so that you don't smudge it into her face if you're doing the hair first before her face. Yeah. Right, so decide on what colour you want her hair. I'm going to do the browns, so I'm going to use the colours that are going in the side as well. So the burnt ochre, the burnt sienna, a bistre, and if I can find a walnut brown, I'll use it as well. Yeah, got a walnut brown. Pardon me. And because she's got a little bit of orange in her dress, I'll probably put a couple of streaks of orange in her hair as well. Right. So if you have them nice and sharp, like I always say. So the way that the face has been done, there's a little space for you to have the pattern in her hair there. So if we just sort of distinguish where that pattern is by putting in a few sort of lines either side. Just get a few lines in. You can decide on whether you want her to have a big pattern or a small pattern, and if you're not happy with where the pattern is, just go back in and add some more lines. So there, then you know where your pattern is. And so from that you can, I'm going to just bring her more towards me, if that's okay. Right, so I'm just going to, with this very light one, put in the very first layers. And if you come over the top and in to the picture so that you're coming in at the same sort of shape that her head is, then it'll help make her hair look like it's going in the right direction. And her pattern is coming up and over. And then it just starts to make it look like there's a bit of volume. So I'm just doing this sort of rough for the first sort of, just to get a first layer in. Right, so I'm going to give her, you can use your normal pencil if you're not confident with your coloured pencil to start off with, or you can just go straight in with a coloured pencil. If you want to give her some little swirly bits, so starting at the bottom, just imagine there's a little bit of hair coming down, and then we're going to do a little swirl that goes like so, coming down. Just decide how long you want it. And then maybe have another one that's going to be inside the hair and it's going to swoop around it. Like that, perhaps. And then have another one coming down through. If you do the same at the other side, you can have as many as them as you like. And then go to your darker brown. So for me, that's going to be the bistre. And then I'm going to, wherever those lines are, I'm going to then grab a hold of it and then bring it up so that it's coming into the hair, and then have some lines coming up. So it's going to be at its darkest down here at the bottom, and then these lines swooping up. And then again, coming from the pattern out. You start off with singular sort of lines, first of all, to get the shape of how her head is, the shape of her head. Then you can start to fill them in. Now, the more time you take with hair and the more layers you do, the better, really. It's a whole workshop on its own, really, but I'm going to just do it quickly with you. Now, if you start at the top and then if you start at the bottom, then you've got a lot more control to find out where you want some shine in your hair. So starting at the bottom and working up, you can naturally get a little shine that starts to appear just by getting them to come down and meet each other. And I'm going to have some that's a little bit swirly here. So where the line is for her fringe, just using that as a mirror to then create a little few swirls just at the front there, and then the rest is going to be coming down and round straight. Or not straight, but with a big curl. And it's better as well if you just keep sharp. I'm not going to keep sharpening my pencil during this because I know that it's too noisy. But if you want to do it, if you don't want to have your sharp pencil all the time, if you do it at the very end with a sharp pencil, then you can start to define certain lines. Right, so that's a layer of another colour. Right, now I'm going to use the burnt sienna. Just need another drink. And so now that you know where your pattern is, you can now see how you can go in now with the extra lines and then really emphasize it. And just, if you have them rising up and over rather than going straight along or down, then that starts to make it look like there's a bit of volume in her hair. So you have it flicking over, and then again at the same at the other side. Just have your little flicks. And you can keep doing that, and I tend to have them really dark, like she's got dark roots in there. So I would eventually go in there with some black and have it that it gets lighter as it goes further out. And again, if you want to go along the top of your page and edge it, then you don't have that feeling that it's white at the top, and it makes it look like her head is going off the page. Do any of you have little gems and things with you? Have you got little? Yeah, you do. If you don't, you know, don't worry. The next one I want to do is Wizard of Oz. Do you fancy a Wizard of Oz? Yeah, I think I'll do that one next. I really enjoyed doing that one. So now that I've gotten down to this sort of central point, I'm still putting in some lines, but I'm just not filling it up because I want it to be where the shine is going to be. If you just flick them from the top as well, then you kind of, it just makes it become a bit more natural. Right, now I'm going to do a walnut brown. My walnut brown is getting quite small. We've got another one in there. And then starting at the pattern again with the darkest. And again, I'm going over hard on the side just to take the hair off the page. And I'm just going to have the dark mostly at the top and a little bit at the bottom. And then again as well, I'm going to use the burnt sienna to do these lines that we did. So I'm just going over them now. And have them darkest at the bottom. I'm not used to doing the hair without the face being done. So because there's a little bit of orange, like I said, I like to, whatever colours end up being in it, I try to scatter them all the way through to keep it looking a bit cohesive, look like it's all meant to be working together. So I'm going to bring in a little bit of orange from her dress and put that into her hair as well. So just a few orange little streaks. And I would put a little bit of orange in her eye, maybe have a brown eye, but with a little splash of orange or something, maybe. Once you've done her cheeks, add a little bit of orange on top just to warm them up. And a little bit of black. Again, mostly at the top in the roots. Trying to get rid now of any sort of like white bits that have been missed. The idea is to just try and get lots and lots of different layers of colour, so it looks like she's got some nice highlights come through her hair, and then it's at its darkest at the top, because I imagine that it's a shadow up there that's, so just going over the side and just adding some black. And if you want to create shadows and things, you can still just go in with your circular motions over the top of what you've done. So I have it a little bit darker, maybe to about there. And then the rest of the colour. So I then go back to the start with my lightest and try and build it back up again so that I'm getting rid of all the little white bits. And then I'm going back to my burnt sienna. And so if you have every now and again where you find an area, if you press down and burnish it, then you can make it look like the hair's really shiny. Just once you do that, once you've got loads and loads of layers in. So once you've got all of her hair done, would I have time to do the other half as well? I don't know. Where's my normal pencil? So with your normal pencil, so if you just finish off her head at this side a little bit. So if you just imagine, like what we did here at the bottom with her strap coming over her arm, doing the same on her head. So it's like a little hook that's coming out and over and into her hair. And then if you just hook it, and then if you want to bring it down over her face. Oh, I've got a cat. And then over, and then you're going to have it coming down the side like that. But then you also want another little hook like they are just here, so that it looks like it's coming around her head. Yeah, so wherever you've made little loops is where you can put your little gems. I just made a mess there, sorry. And in the way that we did the shadows on our swan under here, you would do the same underneath her garland. So if you have any little gems, I've brought these ones down. These are not even proper gems. I don't know what they are. These ones. I should probably have some tweezers. So then just sticking a little gem on each little lip. You can do as many of these as you like. You can have them fill up the whole garland, or you can just have them on your points where you've made it a bit curly. It's up to you. Oh, I've lost that one. And then I'm going to have some little gems coming down on the side as well. I'm going to have one up here and coming right down the side. Obviously, you know, even if you haven't finished your hair, you can still just do it around it. But it's better if you do your hair first. I do like a little sparkle every now and again. There's Ashley back. Hello. And then at the bottom of the garland, if you want to make it look like there's a few little strands, just have a couple coming off there. It's kind of mirroring her hair then. And so if you imagine obviously her face all coloured, we do some little shadows underneath those little gems. So finding our lightest grey or our grey, and then just underneath it, just doing some little shadows. You probably not want to be doing this yet because you haven't coloured your faces. I just wanted to show you. You can do it at the end if you prefer. But if you just go all the way along with those shots, and then it looks like the garland's coming over her face. So, and then using a darker one and just highlighting underneath those little gems. And eventually building up to your Payne's grey or your black, just whatever. Just make it just slightly, just underneath your gem, just directly at the very bottom. And same on our hair. Create that little shadow coming down. And I still haven't found my fine liner. What do I do with it? Strange how I lost that. But if you have a fine liner, sorry, I've lost mine. I would use my fine liner to then go over this garland that you've made. And once you've got it really dark, you can then create a faint shadow underneath the line as well. Oh, did it too hard. With your little squiggly bits, if you have one that stays grey, it looks like it's further away. And if you have darker ones at the front, then they look more predominant. So I'm just coming back into my background now. Just trying to add a little bit more in there. The other thing I did was I gave my swan a heart. I gave them a black heart. If you want to do the same, just in the center, drawn a little heart, and then little circles at either side, and then colour it in black, either with a fine liner or your black pencil. And so I'm going to bring some pink into my swan, actually. You don't have to, but I just feel like I want to give him some pink. So I'm just going to put some slight areas where there's a little bit of pink in there. Just finding little areas. And same down here at this very bottom bit of his tail, if you want to emphasize them, like what we did here. So just get your black pencil and just
Can you pull it up a bit, please?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
How long was it down there for? Not long. See, I get lost in the art. So I'm just going to put a little bit of pink in the face as well, I think. I mean, if you wanted to give him a little pink blushy cheek, you know, I'm going to put some swirls. So like what we did, the little swirls coming in the blue, I'm going to bring some of those in on the neck as well. Only because that's what I feel like doing. Not because that was what was in the other one. Put some pink here as well. Now I'm going to put some black in some of the areas where there's going to be more of a shadow. So just in here around the bird's neck. And just in here on this corner where her elbow is. Coming up the side. Going to put some black in under her strap. So just underneath there, just makes it look more like a bit of a shadows going on there. So just half of that circle is black, and then I'm going to go back over that again with red to make it a bit stronger. And then I'll add a little bit more red in on her top. So just going in over the top and starting to burnish it and make it shiny. Alright, so I'm just adding a little bit more yellow into her dress. So just alternate now between all the colours, just trying to blend them all together. So just wherever it feels like it needs a little bit of something, just going back in over. So I'm now going back in with the orange, the cadmium orange. I'm just going to use a brown, or what's this one? Yeah, my walnut brown, just to make a little bit more of a shadow coming in off her arm on the side. So just a little bit at the side, just dragging it in a little bit. Making it really dark in the corners. Emphasising the back a little bit, and then this corner here. If you want it to look like there's feathers going over onto her arm, just put a couple of little lines over the top and it'll look like there's a couple of ruffly feathers just sitting in under her arm. So there. That's us got done about as much as we can today.